They keep sending healers, counselors, musicians.
Nothing reaches me anymore. Do you like beetles?
The royal physicians had a name for it. They called it post-collapse withdrawal, a condition documented in Velhari medical literature for centuries, describing the particular kind of dimming that happened to a person after a catastrophic loss. Not grief exactly, though grief was part of it. More like the light inside a person, finding a lower setting and staying there, resistant to every attempt to turn it back up. Princess Nara had been in the recovery wing of the Imperial Medical Center for 47 days. Her body had healed. The physicians confirmed this repeatedly, pointing to scan results and recovery metrics with the quiet satisfaction of people whose instruments were telling them everything was fine. Her body was fine. Her lungs were clear. Her neural pathways had regenerated completely from the damage sustained in the Outer Reach incident. She sat in her recovery chair and looked at the wall and spoke when spoken to, and ate what was brought to her and did not smile. The Empress, her mother, had tried everything. Healers, counselors, the finest musicians in the Velhari system who played for an hour each morning in the corridor outside her door. Distinguished visitors who brought news of the outside world, delivered in tones carefully calibrated to be interesting without being overwhelming. Her mother came herself every evening and sat beside her and talked about small things: the garden, the court, the way the light looked over the capital city at dusk. Nara listened. She responded. She was, by all observable metrics, present. She was not in any way that mattered there. The human family had arrived at the Imperial Medical Center on day 48, not to see Nara but because the father, a coalition liaison officer named David Reyes, had been admitted with a minor cardiac irregularity that the Velhari physicians were monitoring as a professional courtesy to the coalition diplomatic mission. His wife had been called off-world for 3 days on her own assignment. David's admission was unexpected and brief, and had left him temporarily with a problem. His 8-year-old son Theo had nowhere to be for the afternoon. The medical center's administrative staff had handled this with typical Velhari thoroughness, designating a supervised waiting area for the child and assigning an attendant to watch him for 3 hours. Nobody had accounted for Theo's relationship with supervised waiting areas, which was charitably described theoretical. Nara heard him before he saw him. Not loud, exactly a small, determined sound of feet moving with purpose through corridor, the specific rhythm of a child who has somewhere to be that adults have not yet proved. Then he appeared in her doorway. He was small, dark wavy hair, green t-shirt. He looked at her with the direct, evaluating gaze that children deploy before adults have taught them to soften it, and said, "Do you like beetles? Found a really good one outside." Nara looked at him. In 47 days, no one had asked her anything like they had. Just how she was feeling and whether she needed anything, and if she wanted more light in the room. Nobody had asked about beetles. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't thought about beetles recently. He considered this response as if it were a reasonable and interesting answer. That's okay, he said. I'll show you, and then you'll know. He walked and pulled a small clear container from his pocket and held it up. The beetle was objectively remarkable, deep iridescent, blue-green, the size of Theo's thumbnail, with a geometric pattern on its shell that caught the medical bay's light and returned in 6 directions simultaneously. It looks like your armor, Theo said, nodding at the decorative gold details on Nara's recovery robe, except smaller. And it moves. Something happened in Nara's chest. Not dramatic, small, like a single note struck on an instrument that had been silent a long time. Where did you find it? She asked. The garden section near the east columns. There's a whole patch of blue flowers and they really like it there. I counted 9. He sat down on the edge of her medical equipment panel. Not the chair, the equipment panel, because chair was clearly less interesting, and looked her with that same direct attention. Are you sick? I was, he said. I'm better now. Then why are you still here? Was Nara would think later. Exactly the right question. Not the right question to ask a princess in recovery. According to every protocol the medical staff followed. The right question. Full stop. I'm not sure, she said honestly. Theo nodded. My dad says sometimes people stay in bed 'cause getting feels too big. He says the trick is to find something small first. He held up the container. That's why I look for beetles. The attendant found him 11 minutes later and extracted him with considerable apology toward the princess and considerable firmness toward Theo, who went without resistance, but turned in the doorway and said, I'll bring you a different one tomorrow. There's a red one, but it's faster. He came back the next day, and the day after that. The Empress, informed of the situation by the medical staff, were uncertain whether to classify it as a security concern or a therapeutic development, had made a quiet decision to do nothing about it and observe what she observed. Over the following 9 days was this. Her daughter started eating her meals before they went cold. Then she started asking for the window to be opened in the mornings, and she asked with the specific quality of someone who has thought of something they actually want, whether there were any xenobotany records on the blue flowering plant in the garden near the east columns. On day 58, the day Theo's father David was cleared for discharge and came to collect his son, Theo burst through the door of Nara's recovery room running full speed, both arms out, and Nara opened hers and caught him, and the sound she made was the first real laugh the room had heard in 58 days. The Empress, standing in the doorway with David Reyes behind her, watched her daughter's face, watched the light come back, and fully, completely, and did not say anything for a long moment. Then she looked at David Reyes, who was watching his son with the expression of a parent who has learned not to be surprised by what his child walks into and makes better. Your son, the Empress said, is welcome in this facility for as long as you are posted to the capital.